Hi, I'm Yinka, and this is The Hurt Locker, a podcast where we open a door into men's mental health. Coming up,
we're going for the big questions.
Do you feel let down by society?
Yeah.
Speak your truth.
I don't think it's an unknown fact that I, especially with the nature of the shows, of my two solo shows of what I've covered, that I suffer from various mental health issues, which is one reason why comedy is so important to me, because
it's your reason for getting out of bed, etc. It feels like it's your oxygen. You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. And tonight's guest is Stephen Catling. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, Yinka and Tim.
You're welcome. How are you today?
I'm alive. I'm breathing, so I suppose I'm okay.
Okay. For the benefits who don't know you, who is Stephen Catling?
I mean, I ask that question all the time. Who is anyone? I am Stephen Catling, alternative comedian of many years, nominated for Malcolm Hardie Comedy Award for Originality twice, won the first ever Winners of the Keep It Fringe Award, 7 competition finals to my name, and various other nominations for other awards. I also have a master's in psychology with many years working in the NHS in its administration, as well as many previous years working in the biomedical sciences, both within the NHS as well as for the Francis Crick Institute.
Thank you. That's a mouthful there. What led you into comedy?
Oh, that's difficult. We're going for the big questions. Well, let me try and narrow it down.
Go on.
To various stages. So comedy was something that I've always been raised with. So even in my sort of pre-teens, I was watching Billy Connolly and Lenny Henry. In fact, one of the first ever live shows I ever went was to see Lenny Henry. But equally, watching various comedy films or sketch shows. Monty Python played a huge role into my styling in comedy, and was probably what led me to actually want to do it. As I was doing things, even in as far as back in year 9, I was doing we parodied Noah's Ark in RE role plays. But it wasn't until I was at university that I started performing my own scripted live comedy. Originally, I would say it was more stand-up, but eventually it evolved into what is known as, some would consider, clowning, though it's more of a fusion between stand-up and clowning and sketch comedy. And I did some time at the uni with that. And it wasn't until I started 2017 that I started performing regularly on the circuit. So when officially I don't consider myself starting to perform or count my years as a comedian until 2017, because it's not many gigs between the first one and the one that started in 2017. But then what got me in was basically I like making people laugh, but I also like exploring and doing it with surrealist comedy and ideas. But yeah, it was Python and my sort of, and a mixture of my love of parody that originally got me into comedy.
Thank you.
It's a very big question.
It's a big question indeed. But since you've been performing since 2017, you've been quite successful, quite prodigious in your output, and now people have received you.
Yeah, I mean, that took some time. I would say there was a key shift between the years of, prior to 2019, it was adapting from performing to student crowds, which were very favourable to what I was doing, to adapting into what would be considered more mainstream circuits, and just doing it considerably better in general. Because it was in 2019, I got my first final, which was for the Monty's comedy. It's a competition that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And I think the guy who ran it, he's only starting to rerun nights in London after many years at an open mic level again. But that was considered a fluke in my head until around 22 that I was starting to get into semi-finals and other competitions like Chortle or South Coast Comedian. And then and it wasn't until I started actually pursuing to do my own solo show for Edinburgh in 23, and I happened to get the Keep It Fringe Award, that I would say that's when what I would consider prestige happened, because that was also the same year I got nominated for the Malcolm Hardy, which was, since I ever went to start, before I even did my debut, that was that was the award I wanted. The other award I wanted, which was started to be formed and running in 22, was the Neurodiverse Review Award, and that's why my first show was. I literally geared my show and be very clear that this is about autism, but also done in a surrealist perspective to get nominated for essentially both of those awards. I mean, ideally I would have won them, but there's a lot more things like politics behind and other factors that leads to judges making those decisions. But then that was the same year that I won. I didn't win. I got to the final versus Square, which is a very serious competition in comedy and very well respected. And then since then, I've been accruing just more prestige, good reviews, more finals. Yeah.
Can I ask then, receiving this Malcolm Hardy Award, you said you sought that.
Yeah.
Did you feel as if you'd arrived then by winning that award?
I feel I finally got recognition I had long acknowledged by getting nominated for it.
How did you feel being nominated?
I think it's best to tell you what happened when I found out. So when I found out, it was a message from my director and friend Phil Green, and I didn't think they were doing the Malcolm Hardys. They didn't announce that they were coming, despite the fact I was trying to ask them to come. I didn't even think they were doing the award that year, because they don't necessarily do it. There's been some years where they've not done it. So I didn't think they did it. And it wasn't like it's not announced like it's announced very near the end of the festival when they announce the shortlisting, because they don't announce here's the shortlisters, and then in a few days, it's actually there's like 2 days in this year, for example, when I was nominated again, there was like maybe 2 days between me knowing I was shortlisted and them announcing it. Well, the first time I didn't even know I was shortlisted until they announced Phil Ellis won it. And when I did find out, I sort of Josh Bethaniah, who's a very lovely man and comic, but I had only just met within like a few days earlier. I sort of gave him a crying hug, much to his confusion. But yeah, I had thought I had arrived then when I was nominated, but there's a lot more work to be done before I get where I would like to be in comedy.
Which is where?
I would want to be doing my shows at Monkey Barrel, and I had thought the successes of my first year would have led that. Now, the audience, Monkey Barrel is considered, I don't know how much your audience know about the venues.
You tell us.
So yeah, I'll enlighten. Monkey Barrel is considered one of, if not the best venues to be working under during the Edinburgh Fringe. They are consistently the acts that perform there are often the ones that get the Edinburgh nomination awards. They offer a fantastic tier and for the acts as well, in contrast to the Big Four, for example, and because they're much more cheaper in what they offer, but there is much prestige at Monkey Barrel as there is at, say, the Pleasance or Assembly or Gilded or Underbelly, but the way they run is definitely in more favour to the acts that run onto them. But because of that, they are highly sought after, and it is very difficult it's consistently considered harder and harder to get into Monkey Barrel each year now.
Okay.
To do with the Edinburgh run.
Okay.
Without significant success at usually one of the big four venues, or with the help of certain producers that have good connections there or agents. You have to have a lot of weight and things behind you. Like, we're talking like generally, for example, in Joe Kent Walter's case, the man won BBC New Comedian of the year before, and had many other awards to his name prior to that, like Chortle Student Comedian, as well as being a finalist in Sketch Off.
Okay.
But yeah, equally, I was hoping that I would have then taken my show for Soho Theatre. That show did not get to go to Soho Theatre. It was not selected.
Was the politics behind that, in your opinion?
I don't know. I think it's very difficult to talk, want to discuss what their decisions are. It's with Soho Theatre, especially the Rising Festival. They have about maybe like 150 applicants from the courses over many years applying, and they want a variety of different things, and they also want a very high standard of different things, and it often comes with many different factors that could play for it. Like it's same thing like with any comedy competition. It can be often the decision of the judges, and the judges have their own many different decisions of why they've made what they've made. So when you get into the politics, that can be a bit nifty. And I never asked why was I not selected, because that was not something I wanted to ask. I think I know some people who were very good, for example, and had excellent runs themselves that didn't ask, or they did ask, but they had to really push for it. But
I get a sense that you don't like confrontation. Did you just read what Tim said then?
Yeah, no. I just
You're a shit-hot, unique and innovative comic and performer. I am surprised you put so much weight on awards or seeing that way. That's just his opinion.
Okay, I feel like there's two. I will answer yours first, and then I'll respond to Tim's comment. So, no, not really. I'm not keen on confront. It is. I do have a hot temper, but I generally don't like confrontation, especially when it is something that could potentially burn a bridge.
Yes.
Apparently. Soho Theatre is a very high standard, as are all the Big Four and Monkey Barrel, and they're great venues. I have enjoyed what work I've done with some of these venues before, and I would like them to consider, but that takes a lot of connections and other resources and factors that we have to consider, and there's plenty of that. Now, as for Tim's, but I would say without those awards and without those acknowledgement, I wouldn't have been put on the map on comedy at all. At least not to the industry, which is because it's great. Audience enjoy it, and I certainly do enjoy the uniqueness. But those things can often be the catalyst that help accelerate. It's not. Let's take a point that I'm not sure if I should name the comic, but I'll give an example. So there's one MC used to run MC one particular night in London, and for the competition that they were involved with, or at least emceeing, they highlight, like, for example, well, James Acaster never did well in any finals, or this act never did, who went on to be a big name, never did. But they did other achievements and awards at the Fringe, and they did get those. For example, Acaster was, I think, a 4 times winner for Edinburgh, for the what is known as Perrier. And there is a significant validation and weight. I think it's always about trying to get that legitimacy and that acknowledgement. Like, there is a reason why acts want those 5-star or 4-star reviews for their posters. It's more exposure to a variety of different audience and acknowledgement. Now, granted, they are opinions, and reviewers can often be reflections upon themselves as much as the acts that they are watching. But it's just the way it works.
Okay, not a problem. Okay,
no,
thank you.
Thank you for saying you appreciate that, Tim. But there is a reason why we seek that.
Okay. Can I ask, you've come onto the Hurt Locker about mental health, etc. What's in your Hurt Locker? Okay, so I asked you right at the beginning, how are you? And your response was, I'm alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Because the answer to that question, the sincere answer is probably most often not. I'm not okay. Like, I am. I don't think it's an unknown fact that I, especially with the nature of the shows, of my 2 solo shows of what I've covered, that I suffer from various mental health issues. My first solo show covered ableism, for example, and because of what I encountered due to my various workplaces due to my autism, and the difficulty is to integrate in society and basically actually earn a decent living, where I'm actually valued for my differences, which is one reason why comedy is so important to me, because comedy is one of the few places where I am valued. I do feel valued and acknowledged most of the time. Well, my last one was, obviously, it was themed around 2 particular breakups, one that was very toxic and the other where it was actually amicable. But it was also covering dealings of depression, which I have been battling probably again since early high school. I've been battling depression and anxiety. And unfortunately, probably even now, I'm still battling pretty bad depression as a result of my feeling in the grand scheme of things, as well as in, and that's not just in comedy, but also within the day job, which is unfortunately very still essential for comedy, because it's where most of my money is earned. And for example, I'm not, like many people of my generation, we are in a lot of us are in jobs that we are grossly overqualified for, and grossly being underpaid. We have no home. We just rent, unlike parents at our age who for example, my father could support my mother and my two sisters at my current age, because he would have been around my age now, I think, when he would have had my two sisters, without my mother having to work while I am renting a studio. No, mainly that is a studio in Sheffield, but I'm still renting. I don't have a home. I don't have big savings. I'm not settled. And arguably, like my dad was someone who didn't work hard at school either, at least not in high school. And he did apply himself at like what he would have referred to as a polytechnic. And he was given opportunities to then become like an electrical engineer. I went in and did biomedical science, which should have been a day job that would have set me for life, but I had to battle quite hard to get much progress, and I broke in the pandemic, essentially due to the ableism I encountered and the lack of progression opportunities, or just the constant bullshit. And I saw a recent article posted, but in a group for people who are trying to get into assistant psychologist posts or are assistant psychologists, but she was posting, for example, how she just can't get past the AP role. But in her article, I think she was also acknowledging like there are many people in jobs that are overqualified who aren't even able to get the AP role. And equally, at the moment, I'm dealing with getting a slew of rejection emails from jobs that I'm like, I am qualified to do this. But for example, one of them, I asked the feedback why. They're like, it's very competitive. There's 180 people that applied for these posts, and then they're like, you don't have enough extensive experience in one particular thing, which, considering applying, because I don't think they think by looking at some things, they don't always look at the whole. And I even once messaged one of the psychology leads to ask, and they're like, well, you should do the support worker role. And it's like, well, hang on a second. I've done experience in SEN and schools for a good time, and a mass. Why is that? Oh, well, we need you to be working specifically in health. Like, oh, so I did the wrong exploitation for you, is what you're saying. It feels like, and when I worked as a teaching assistant or learning support or the various other titles that the agencies gave, it was exploitative. It's underpaid. It's not match. It doesn't match my qualifications. It doesn't match my abilities. I'm not being challenged. I'm not having mind. I'm not barely enough to live. And so when you get responses like that, I'm pissed.
Okay.
I'm pissed. I'm angry. And thing is I've encountered other people who are of my age who are also, they're pissed, they're angry, because they're also, I think like Paddy Young was in his 23 show, what was it called? Hungry, Horny, Scared. In his article, he was posting like at his age, he's in his 30s and he's still living in a shared house and having to hide his detergent under his bed. So his housemates don't nick it, while his parents or his grandparents at a similar age, they have a home, raising a family at that age.
Do you feel let down by society?
Yeah.
Or by the leaders of our society?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
They've promised us so much.
I feel it's not just society, I feel let down by teachers. I feel let down by the NHS, both as a user of it as well as an employee. I've had like some of the things that were allowed to be done to me when I was in biomedical science was horrific.
Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, sure, I'll go on. I won't name the hospital for legal reasons, but I will discuss what they did. Now, it took me a while to get into an associate practitioner role. which is just band 4, which is
Yes.
Which, for those who don't know how the NHS works, it works in the banding system. Band 2 is generally where most people start. Band 4 is actually a bit more junior and would be what you would expect if you had a degree. And then you would expect to hopefully then get a trainee post at a band 5 and be a scientist. And I was, at my age, I should have already been a biomedical scientist had I continued to pursue. But in that time, I had a lot of crap trying to get even a band 2 role when I left my initial degree. And then I had, even at one point when I was just trying to get a job in London from a town in Surrey I did not want to live in at all, that I had to move to even get into a lab, I ended up working 2 years in animal research, which, just be clear, not as a scientist, as essentially a technician.
Yes.
Doing the cleanup and supplying. I wasn't doing science. I wasn't doing anything interesting. I was just cleaning shit out of cages. Is essentially. Wait, am I allowed to? No. Try not to swear.
Swear if you want.
Okay. I'll try not to, because I could go off the handle. But basically, doing something that. Essentially, I was a glorified cleaner. And then there was some kind people that in the malaria labs that basically helped me and got the training opportunities that eventually led me to get this post I really wanted. Well, it wasn't specifically that post. Any associate practitioner role would have done. And in that post, partly because I think I had PhD from working in animal research, as well as just not necessarily understanding my own condition fully and how I interact with people, or because I can be quite blunt and direct. This eventually led to me not passing my probation, and because I wasn't learning things quick enough, I wasn't given sort of support it was needed. But part of trying to adjust, because obviously it was some difficulty with co-workers, I wrote a 2,000 word, with discussion with Dr. Pershelf, agreed to write a 2,000 word document to help my colleagues understand autism. They would read it, they would then send questions, and this is the key word, anonymously through my managers to me. I would then write my own answers, and then I had to do the talks twice because we're in the middle of the pandemic, so we split the team, because if one team had to be quarantined, there would still be a lab that could run because the other half would still be active. And some of the questions that were allowed to ask me without consequence as well. I was asked things, and I put this in my 23 show. I do say the questions I was asked, and they're not jokes, they're not exaggerations. I was literally asked things like, do autistic people use their condition as an excuse to be able to get away with things without being questioned? This is NHS staff that were allowed to ask that to me anonymously. I don't know who asked it, but they were allowed. Others asked me, do autistic people, are they able to walk in another person's shoes and understand that other people have problems greater than their own? It's like, great, dismissive as well. Or part of when I'm obviously upset or dealing with more confrontational situations, yes. I'm talking about, I obviously explained I might tense, and including my fists, and they're saying, does that mean you might turn to violence? And there were very similar questions of that nature. And when I said to my man, these aren't okay, they're like, they're just questions. Hell, even in a recent interview that I had, that I'm trying to sort out, I didn't get it. And part of the reason why I didn't get it is because, well, I don't know why I didn't get it, but something that didn't help was prior to it, and this is something I've never really done, I haven't done for years, though I should have probably. I am allowed, because of my neurodiversity, to ask for the questions in advance of the interview, 100%. Because it allows me to be on a more even playing field to my neurotypical colleagues.
Yes.
Now, obviously, I didn't put that requirement in my initial application, but when I spoke with my employment advisor, as part of the therapy I'm going under at the moment, they said, yeah, you can ask that for them. You are legally able and entitled to have that. And that manager misunderstood what I asked, and he just focused on the structure of the interview and said, "Oh yeah, we'll put the questions in front of you." That wasn't what I asked. So I chased up, and obviously he didn't respond. Not his fault, but he didn't correct it. But it meant I went into that interview not with the support I needed. Now, again, because I'm not keen on confrontation, I didn't say that in the interview, but I basically had to put the complaint in because it's like, you put me in a situation because of your misunderstanding at a disadvantage. Had those questions and I not got the job, fine.
Yeah.
But, and then they say things, oh, but we're sorry that you feel that you've been disappointed in the situation because we do try to ensure fairness and equality and that for neurodiverse candidates at all stages of the application. It's like, and then they also highlight, well, and that before when I asked the questions and they sent the initial response, and when they've sent my response to my complaint, they've said, and we do hire a lot of neurotypical and neurodiverse people in our roles. It's like, that was a psychology, mental health related role as well, and one that was very difficult to get on because most of those roles will just say no to me and many other people, and that's fine because they'll have a lot of experienced candidates that have the luxury of being able to, or had the opportunities to have many years in whatever they bloody well want. But I'm sorry that you've experienced that as well, Tim. Sorry, Tim just said
Yes.
It's similar things. And it's sort of it's not enough to say sorry. In that case, and that's a more recent one, which is obviously why I'm quite angry at the moment. But even going back to the what was the incident in one labs in the pandemic, it's sort of, I told this to many people, and it was partly one of the driving forces as well for the debut show, because it was why I call it behavioral problems, something autism, because those questions and because it was permitted by my managers caused me such pain. And equally in the role that I did after, I didn't have a great time there either. It was a lower band than I was before, and I was being rejected for roles that were of a low band despite my spit. It's like, they're just really difficult, some of these people in these hospitals, with their demands and what they want. But in one of the succeeding roles that I got after, when I left that to do work in another lab permanently, which was just something I was doing to then help more money so that I had more money when I did the psychology. One of those managers said to me at the end when I was handing my keys, "I'm sorry that you had a difficult time here. I understand." It's like, I had to say to him, like, "That's great. You didn't
do anything.
And, well, you didn't fucking do it." Yeah. And I know you're not my direct line manager, but it's not like I didn't speak with management and said, "Can I have these things, these opportunities that I should have as a man with my qualifications and skills, so that I can train and do that?" Because giving it to people who have just graduated that fit and who are probably neurotypical or whatever factors they've decided, because they just like them more. I don't know. It's like it's not enough for an apology.
Absolutely.
And it's bad enough in those situations where they do apologize. It's like, well, you didn't do anything. But it's equally bad when I think to that role and there was no consequence for them. There was just simply, I was essentially bullied out my role, a role that I spent many years painstakingly trying to get.
Stephen, I feel a lot of pain here. Tim has written.
Yeah.
Just going back, you mentioned experiencing depression.
Yeah.
During high school.
Yeah.
Were you, 13, 14 at the time?
I think I might have been 12. and that came from primary school, and even throughout high school, I was bullied. I don't know the reasons for primary school. I know in high school it was because I was a nerd and different.
Yeah.
I just be clear, I wasn't diagnosed with autism till I was 23.
Okay.
So undiagnosed, and that's something I think is quite typical of
Your generation.
No, I was going to say of higher
High functioning
neurodivergence.
Yes.
Whether ADHD, autism, the others, is that we get missed early on, but then we also we spend a lot of our lives experiencing alienation and being othered in society. And the annoying thing is, I was sort of raised to think that the hard work and my intelligence and my diligence would basically get success in life. And while that is true, I've succeeded a lot, as yourself and, well, as Tim has highlighted, and as someone who very much enjoys my comedy, and as those awards have shown, yeah, I suppose. But I should. It's difficult to say, because I know people will say the world doesn't owe you anything.
Speak your truth. Speak your truth.
And there's an element of that's true for everyone. But I will say, sometimes I think, no, I do deserve better. I deserve and have deserved better roles in terms of day job. If it wasn't for what I think sometimes, the autism, in my opinion. So, for example, like, I got a little irritated, for example, when the British Comedy Guide quoted saying that I stated in one coverage that they did with me that I'm proudly autistic. I am not proud of something that I was born with. I'm no more proud of being autistic than I am of being British, because that is not a choice. I didn't choose to be autistic. I didn't choose to be born in this country. Those are things beyond my control. My autism, in my opinion, or at least my experience of it is a blessing as much as a curse. And that's something I have to deal with, because while it has afforded me a lot of access to certain behaviors and patterns, or possibly the high intelligence that reviewers like to keep commenting on, because there's been at least 4 of them that, if I could, off the top of my head, that have said Stephen Catling in some form. They say Stephen Catling is a highly intelligent man. And I think my autism is linked to that. I also think it is also linked to those idiosyncrasies and outside the box thinking that has defined my sort of styling and my innovation. But it also makes social interaction more difficult.
Okay.
I might be more sociable than maybe what could be considered typical of an autistic person. I might be able to do a lot, and it's certainly not hindered many other comics on the circuit who have the condition to an extent, but that's at least what it might look on the surface, I think, because I think Rialina, who's a very established and famous comic with autism, has highlighted that there is difficulties of being an autistic comedian and how you work or can network, because a lot of comedy isn't just what you can do on the stage. It's also what you're doing off the stage in terms of networking and making the right impression. And that is an Achilles heel.
Yes.
Because if I was better at interacting with people, I could be getting, say, those producers, or be considered more favourably for those with certain judging panels to get opportunities and other things. And I think, even to an extent, there's a duality to it, of which it can both be a strength. It can be the greatest source of strength. It's also, and I think actually in 3,000 Years of Longing,
I've seen it with Idris Elba.
Yeah. My man crush. Next to him and Tom Ellis, the only two men I'm possibly gay for. Speaking as a heterosexual man, he's a very handsome man, Idris Elba, and
He is.
I remember, right? So at uni, sorry.
Go on. Go where you want.
At uni, the Jungle Book, the Disney back when the Disney remakes weren't shit, and the Jungle Book came out, and they were doing something. Obviously, they were still following the formula of the stories, but they weren't fucking up with the recipe too much with their innovation. When I remember one of my friends who's a film student, who I'm not going to name, essentially when they found out Shere Khan was realised Shere Khan was being voiced by Idris Elba, was like, I want to fuck that tiger. Without a beat. But anyway, 3,000 Years of Longing, it's Tilda Swinton's character who is the sort of language history professor. She's basically this professor of mythology. She essentially says they don't say, it's an excellent example. There's many reasons why I like that film besides Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton, and in fact, it's just very good. It's also the fact that they show an autistic woman, which is Tilda Swinton's character, who is very clearly, if not autistic, some other form of neurodiversity, and does talk about how basically what is her greatest source of strength is her greatest source of weakness, and that's probably played part why she lost her. It talks about in the film that she was divorced from her husband, and that isn't held just by me as an autistic man. I think many other people with the condition or with other forms of neurodiversity do consider it both a source of strength and weakness. Though we often feel, speaking for myself, I often feel like I get reprimanded more for its weaknesses than praised for its strengths. There's been numerous times where it's not been well handled. It's certainly getting more. There's been improvements.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. Where and how does society need to improve?
I think it needs to change the way it interviews people.
But even before the employment stage, what do you think generally in the context of your autism needs to be embraced and accepted by society itself?
In the same way of any neurodiversity, it's just there are different strengths to it, and they need to work with it and help us learn how to work with it, while also trying to work around the weaknesses. I was calling an article, I can't remember the post, but essentially, higher support need autistic people get more support because they have the appearance, or it presents itself in what is considered the archetype of what neurodiversity and autism looks like. If it's sort of, headphones on and there's sensory issues and they're screaming, the teachers will adjust that. Now, I don't think they did that when I was in school.
No.
Or at least, but I didn't go to an SEN school. I was in a mainstream school. But the child that is neurodiverse, who is obviously suffering, who politely voices their concerns and issues of can we just try and lower the volume down on things? they get sort of, why are you complaining? You're always like this. And it's sort of that we need that understanding that high support definitely need high support, but even people low on the spectrum need the support. And I think that's an important thing we need in society. I also think that they need to maybe pay attention a bit more in interviews when you select the diversity thing. Yes. And when you are ticking those boxes for neurodiverse or learning difficulty or mental health, because they're supposed to, for example, have that guaranteed interview scheme.
Yes.
If you meet the requirements. And I don't feel like they actually do that. But the problem is I have no proof. It's just a inkling. Tim saying, I've noticed the phrase, do you feel you've had a fair interview, has disappeared in my experience for a while now. I've never even been asked that question. There's been interviews where I've certainly given them praise. So don't get me wrong, there are some people that do things right. For example, when I worked for the Integrated Care Board, my boss, Anthony, and his co-managers, I actually said, like, you actually gave a very good interview that was sort of friendly and welcome. But there have been many where they've not realised or not listened. And I think there was one where also, like, one of the co-managers, he did say after I was hired, he highlighted that there was a question where they asked me, which I think some employers would have gone like, oh, no, not them. But he went, oh, that's just a fair point, which essentially, I think the question he talked about was sort of like, what motivates you? And I think I just gave a very blunt answer of like, what motivates my job is just to do a good job. Like, it's my job. Because I feel like some people, they want flowery answers and all, like, oh, yes. This job, it means this will mean everything, and it's like, it's a job.
Perform an interview.
Yes. And I guess I don't like that interviews are, and this is ironic as a performer, are a performance.
Yes.
They are a dance, they are a flirtation. They're like a date, and a date's fine because there's plenty of fish in the sea, and my dates don't tend to pay me. No, sorry. That was
That's okay. Can I ask, Stephen, has your depression ever led you to thoughts of suicide?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll elaborate a bit further. Prior to 24, I would give the statement and felt the statement, it's not that I want to kill myself or I want to die or I want to die. It is simply that I wish not to exist, which is an existentially different answer to that, since it's the idea of that I am erased as if I was never there. And that's certainly thoughts I've had for many years. Reoccurring, though not always strong, and my depression flares up and down based on things that are happening around me. But in 24, I think maybe around March was the first time it started getting louder. And I thought, sometimes, yes. Unfortunately, I have too many reasons I want to live to ever want to enact on that.
Why did you say unfortunately?
Did I say unfortunately?
I think you did. I may be mistaken, but I thought I heard, unfortunately, I have too many things to live for.
Okay. Fortunately, I think that was a Freudian slip.
Okay.
How did Freud die? He slipped.
Very good.
How did Plato die? He was caved in. Tim said I did say unfortunately. So yeah, it was a slip. Fortunately, I have reasons such as comedy that keeps me going.
Okay.
And comedy is actually quite an important aspect to my general well-being, keeping me alive. Reason why I want to get up in the morning.
Do you gig regularly?
Yeah. It almost to the point where I kind of get a bit annoyed if comics ask me, "Oh, you gigging a lot?" It's like, yeah, don't stop.
I'm assuming if I got that, the reason why I asked the question is because if you said that it's your reason for getting out of bed, etc., it feels like it's your oxygen.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of purpose.
I mean, yeah, and I actually wept on the day of my diagnosis when I was talking about comedy to them because I distinctly it was a pretty stressful day because I had to travel from Surrey to Derby because I was still registering. I'm like, well, we could get you into a more local. I'm like, no, I'm not waiting for this anymore. I want my damn diagnosis. I've been waiting for 2 years. We're getting the assessment. And when I talked about the first sort of few times I was gigging and doing my first performances, it was almost like I had never known. This isn't a hyperbole, just be clear. But it was the first sort of most connected I had ever felt with a large room filled with people in a positive way, and actually didn't feel like I was an alien, or at least if I was, that I was accepted for my idiosyncrasies. The power and empowerment that people feel when they do comedy is a very good high, and one that
Yes.
I chase quite a lot, hunt quite persistently. I talked with some of my old uni friends because I was part of that comedy society at my first uni, and something I discussed with them was the difference between me and a lot of them, because many of them, in fact, I think, barring some cases, for example, of one of my friends who he runs a night in Manchester and he does produce things, and another does act, and one has gone and off the wagon, the comedy wagon, but obviously, based on his last time, he just didn't enjoy it enough to pursue it. And some that did perform for a bit longer. Of my society, I'm the only one that's continued and is doing it at a sort of professional, or at least well, I'm not professional, I'm semi-professional at best. And the reason why, I think, is because they enjoyed it and they liked doing it and they wanted to do it. I need it.
Yeah.
As you pointed, it's a great way of describing it. It's oxygen. It's the way I would say is like, I need to do comedy like a fish needs to swim. Is more what I see it as, or a bird. I would say like a bird needs to fly.
Or a bird then?
What?
Did you say or a bird then?
Or a bird that needs to fly. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Or a bird that needs to fly.
Okay.
Sorry, I need to enunciate.
I need to clear my ears out. Don't worry about that.
No. I do sometimes mumble. Or a bird that needs to fly, but that's a little bit more complex because birds don't always want to fly. They'll fly or not fly depending on the needs of the situation.
And breed.
And the breed. Well, species. Because you're thinking of chickens.
Well, I was actually thinking of penguins.
They also cannot fly. Chickens actually can glide if their wings aren't clipped.
Is that what the... Okay, glide. Stephen, how have you felt being on the Hurt Locker?
It's nice.
It's nice.
It's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk about my background.
Do you find it hard? Do you find it difficult? Does it expose you?
I do. There are points in this, in speaking today, I do feel exposed because I know that there will be an audience that will be watching and listening. That being said, it's not like I did a very personal live show at Edinburgh this year. That was actually more personal and harder to do than the previous show.
Okay.
Even though there were some people that said it was actually better. Being open and exposed isn't necessarily something I'm not familiar with. It's not always comfortable. And I'm obviously talking about things that I'm having to monitor what I'm trying to say, because if I start name dropping various employers, there's potential legal repercussions. But ultimately, it's not that much more different. It's just a little bit more personal because I'm speaking to yourself rather than to a large crowd. But it's still not, if you think about it, still it's the same principle. But it's also important. And that's partly why I wanted to join, because I think with the rise of issues in men's mental health, you guys are doing important work. I mean, I've seen, if you go on social media, it's basically an epidemic of men's mental health getting worse. And it's not that women or those who are assigned female at birth there are just certain particular problems that are very toxic, masculine, patriarchal society.
Yes.
Makes it harder does everything to try and suppress. I've certainly seen and been concerned when I've worked in schools, and I've seen sixth form, just about sort of GCSE level students being fans of Andrew Tate, who's a very not mental health and very almost like I would almost say like the final boss of toxic masculinity. If it was a video game, he'd have like 2 health bars, and when you get the first health bar down, he changes moveset. And it would probably be Dark Souls music playing. But I think it's important, and I am aware because when I've done both my shows, well, they are superficially, and while I present often the clowning and the surrealist aspects to it on the forefront, and they are what people come for, and they are what people enjoy. But people also need to and want to hear and relate to the deeper humanity. So in the case of behavioral problems, there were neurodiverse people who were relating to it, much to my surprise, feeling very seen from what I was doing with that because of the way my autism presents itself. And likewise, I had, and I think I remember it more because it's this year, I had men coming up to me, mainly men, coming up to me at the end of my show saying they've also gone through some similar experiences trying to deal with their mental health, especially in regard to some of their own traumatic breakup. Yes. And just to be clear, the show covers a much earlier traumatic breakup that happened in contrast to my much more healthy recent breakup, which is, I'm still friends with that person, just put it that way. Like, it wasn't, that breakup happened for things that neither of us could control.
Yes.
And we are still very supportive friends and caring for each other. Like, I still visit and help them with their dogs, for example. Equally, just when available and when, if required, I will even sort of essentially dog sit, but we still spend time and we're good friends, and that's important.
That's important.
That is important. And I think, because I think it's something that I've sort of come to show, like, I think it's important that when you end relationships, you try and do it amicably and try not cause the other person, each other's much pain because in the previous long-term relationship, I tried everything I could when that relationship ended to try and make the sort of break as clean as possible. I wasn't the one that initiated it, but in her case, she was incredibly cruel in her behavior, and in some aspects unwarranted cruelty. I wasn't the best partner, but it didn't. I'm sorry if I have to be mysterious and
No, that's okay. That's okay.
and not allude, but I think, yeah, we only battle these things that are endemic in society by actually talking about them. And we're only going to end up dismantling the oppressive patriarchy by going against it. And then hopefully in how many centuries, where, or at least the next generations and the generations after, we're in a better society.
I remember watching The Twilight Zone as a kid, and this one episode was about the Earth. And to cut a long story short, basically the population knew that the Earth was not going to exist in 200 years' time, and all wars ceased. And
okay, that's a much more positive outcome than I was expecting.
Okay, it's The Twilight Zone, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
The point I'm trying to convey was that we've got it within ourselves to make things positive. You speak about the epidemic of men's mental health, and it's on social media, etc. It's been there for centuries. But I think it's only now that we're starting to catch the tip of the iceberg.
I think if we go back 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, there's more conversations on toxic masculinity.
Yes.
I think the more recent things are the men's loneliness epidemic, which some people are saying, well, that's the fault of the men. I'm like, that's a little bit, it's not black and white. Like, there's certainly been a lot of men that have done, especially in toxic masculinity situations, that have contributed to that and are the reason why. And I have every empathy to any woman who says, I choose the bear, but there is also many problems in the other direction, in terms of men, for example, are also victims of domestic abuse. They are also victims of rape. They are also struggling. Yes. And it's not, I get very annoyed if the suffering of one group does not diminish the suffering and experiences of another. And I'm very much on the side of that, but what we need is nuance, is what I'm saying.
I concur.
And it does require men to reflect on themselves.
100%.
And we do need to reflect, but we also need to be better. And we need to consider how, for example, the patriarchy has harmed men so that we can dismantle it. I mean, we should be dismantling it also so that we can just have a fair society for all sexes and genders, etc., etc.
We do. And we need to be able to show our emotions.
Yeah.
And that it's okay.
Yeah. And to also encourage men to say, speak up, analyze, reflect, improve. But we also need to say to a lot of people, stop doing a shitty thing or stop oversimplifying it.
Yes.
And sorry, my brain keeps coming back to one that I remember recently that kicked off, where it was a female poster who, she essentially, when they say it's time to be silent for Men's Mental Health Month, because basically the amount of high rate of male suicide, and she's got like this high energy music going woo woo, basically saying like, I'm not going to be silent, I'm not going to pay my respect. And it's sort of, we need to address that, because that sort of attitude is going to fuel the other problematic things. There's Andrew Tate, for example, is a symptom of a larger issue and has been exacerbated and prominent because of these other factors and attitudes, and it will only strengthen it. So we need to challenge everything, because basically we need we need to be more intersectionalism in our social justice.
Okay. But the point you make about Men's Mental Health Month, etc., it's a bit like Black History Month.
Yeah.
It's a load of bollocks. A load of bollocks. Because why you just spoke then about the intersectionalism that we need to have. Black History Month shouldn't just be occurring come October. It should be right through the curriculum. And so when we talk about Men's Mental Health Month, men are dying every day.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, and no, I agree. That should be done. There should be no sort of For example, if we go with like the LGBT month, I'm very much against like various capitalist organizations. Like, now it's time to get the rainbow flags out.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
Yes.
Like that, I agree. I'm against that, and in that part of it, yes. And I think there should be more. And that's certainly something. If we're going for the example of Black History Month, and racism in general, that should be something we should be in schools a lot more. Like, we should be discussing colonial history in high school, when history is still a mandatory subject, because we do need to help. The only way we do need to highlight and help understand, make sure young people understand that the reason why things are as they are is because of what has happened in the past and why these things have happened. Because we need to understand where the cancer came from.
Yes.
And where it originated, and how it's still prevalent and being dealt and not being dealt with in society. With that awareness, hopefully move forward in trying to correct these. Yeah, there is a lot of injustice in the world.
Do you have hope for the future?
Depends on what day of the week you're asking me.
Okay, fair. That's fair. Well, you get up every day.
I do.
So there must be a modicum of, if not hope, then a case of curiosity.
Or defiance.
Let's see what happens. Oh, sorry.
Defiance.
Don't let the buggers grind me down. Okay.
Existence is rebellion.
Okay. Okay.
It's difficult to say. What with the alt-right in America, the right-wing issues that we have in this country.
Would you say they're right-wing, or just in America and here? Wouldn't you just go as far as to say it's quite fascist?
In America or the UK or the world?
Both. I'm not talking globally because I don't know the world, but I'm here ensconced in GB, and what I see being portrayed via media, etc.
We're getting into I think more so in America with Trump.
Yeah.
It's with what's happening with ICE, and essentially Trump is a criminal.
Yes, agreed.
He did instigate a coup. His voters did protest and storm, and not peacefully protest. They stormed the Capitol, and he did cause that. And that man should be behind bars. He shouldn't be in the Oval Office. He shouldn't be in the White House. I have very strong opinions about Trump. I have a And in my current material, I mock Epstein, for example, quite. I actually do have a dig at Epstein because he did do a Nazi salute, and the right wing is using misinformation. They are using propaganda, and it's not a case of, well, the left does too. It's like, not really. No, it doesn't. There are certainly parts of the left that, and I'm speaking as someone on the left wing, that as a left wing politically, we do need to have some introspection and analyze and our strategies, and we do sometimes respond a little too drastically on some things. But yeah.
Just, you mentioned going to therapy.
Yeah.
How's it working for you?
It's very difficult because I'm using NHS therapy, which I have to be re-referred to every so many weeks if I wish to continue, and I had to be very specific this time about the kind of therapy I got because they were going to try and apply cognitive behavioral therapy on me, which last time I did it, and it's why, and I think partly due to my own neurodiversity. Basically, first time I ever did cognitive behavior therapy, they did the whole background of like everything up until that point. And I explained, and I went through and answered the therapist questions, and she went, I'm not sure how effective this is going to be because usually cognitive therapy is to apply for irrational thought processes and behaviors. And what you've said is all very well thought out, reasoned, and rational. Essentially, they said,
yes,
it's not you're insane. It's the problem is you are sane.
That's the problem.
And it's
That's the problem.
It's like, so it's like we can't dismantle this because everything that you've presented is based on empirical evidence. Oh, damn you with your logic and arguments and statistics and evidence for why you are as you are. Yeah, it's another issue, and they do try and tunnel people into a certain model that does not. It does work on a lot of people, but this is something that they're trying to amend in medicine in general, never mind mental health. They need to learn how to personalize things more. But obviously, that's very difficult in our system, which is that the free and NHS system, with the amount of cuts and funding and difficulty, means it's very, very difficult to actually apply things like that.
Yes.
And this leads to delays. What was your specific question on mental health or therapy?
You mentioned,
how was it?
Yeah, how was it for you? How have you experienced it? But you've kind of answered that question. And with CBT as well, it's very directive in its approach.
Well, it's designed for a very certain thing. It definitely works on a lot of aspects for certain things. Yes. There is a lot of controversy in its application to the neurodiverse as well. And this is something that I studied a fair bit when I did my master's in terms of educational psychology and its application on neurodiverse children and teenagers, but equally even as adults for dealing with it. It's not always it requires a lot more nuance and delicate approach, which we don't have enough time, and I did not bring notes and citations.
Next time,
I could write. When I wrote my article for Chortle this year to promote my solo show for Edinburgh Fringe, in the initial draft, I actually did the citations, as in I treated it like an academic paper. And then someone, no, don't do that. You don't need to put Stevenson et al. 2019. But it's like, how will people know what I'm talking about if I don't cite everything?
Funny.
I need credibility.
You need to verify. Everything needs to be verified.
Thank you, Tim. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Tim. I'll definitely come back in 2006 if you have me. Would it be okay if I plug any shows?
Yes, but before that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much. But
yeah, we opened a can of worms there, didn't we?
We just did. Who's the most important person in your life? You can only pick one person.
That's a difficult one. It was probably my partner. And there's certainly an argument for it to say just myself, but barring that, I would say the most important person in my life are not person, but people are my parents.
Okay. What if I said you've already answered the question? What if I said the most important person in your life is you?
Yes.
Could you embrace that fully? Do you embrace that fully?
Well, the fact that I wasn't willing to answer that answer straight away implies that it's not one I'm fully embracing without some, or at least there is a slight discomfort in admitting that I have to admit that. But you're with yourself the longest, most amount of time in life.
Yes.
Fortunately, you can't escape from that company, even if you want to. He's so moody. I think self-love for those who have various experiences in their life, such as with their mental health, and I'm not speaking just for myself, but many others, it's not easy to come by.
No.
I battle many feelings of frustration, anger, not just to external factors such as society or employers or parts of the industry, and how frustrating it can be, which is normal. But also that does go internal, and something that I've had feelings since, as I said, since I was 12. It probably even earlier, because it's likely it only became apparent to the point where sort of when I was getting to 21, it's like I made a friend of mine weep when she realized that I, at the time, hated myself. And I do battle a considerable amounts of self-loathing, self-anger, which is not justified if I was to look at things. But this is why it takes work.
Absolutely.
And I do laugh at the fact that sometimes that when it comes to the stereotype of a comedian, I very much fit that particular stereotype of the depressed, lonely, self-hating individual.
You're not Stephen. You're not the only one.
No, I am. I know that very well. I know many people that have had to deal with it. I even, one of my old comedy society, we meet up as often as we can since 22, because it was in 22. No, not 22. It was in 23 that we found out that just a year before that, one of our former presidents of the Comedy Society and someone who was quite important towards us and a friend, he killed himself. And we have all discussed our various feelings of the matter and bonded in memory of him. We have a lot of there's a lot of sadness we feel because with his passing, because he was a good guy. He was really clever. He was really funny. He could have done improv. He could have done sitcom writing. He was a good stand-up. He was a good sketch writer. Very kind, very gentle. Like, my last memory of them was actually in a work experience thing that because comedy had gone on hold because of the pandemic, and so I tried to do this work placement for helping children with their literacy because I was looking to work and get some experience for psychology, and he was also there doing that. So, like, even towards the end, he was still trying to help people.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, but no one helped him, or at least we feel that. I feel the world failed him. There are things I don't understand and what led to it and happened because we weren't in each other's lives, but it's just another example of why it's so important to be tackling these things of mental health, and the importance of mental health, self-care, and dealing with the issues of people who deal with issues of self-hatred or loathing and mental illness. Sorry if I...
No, it's okay. It's okay. That's important. That's important.
Just, when you mentioned that, he came into mind. But yeah, it's not easy, and I certainly probably have a better relationship with myself presently than I've had in some previous years. But that's taken work.
It's a battle. It's a battle.
It's very much a battle. One that I hope I win.
By the way, would you like to tell us what's coming up for you in 2026?
Yes, I would. So 3 things I can plug. I'm in the final for the Get Up Stand-Up Comedy Club competition final in December. Tickets will be on their site. I'm doing the work in progress for my new show, which is currently named Clownfish Out of Water, which will be done at Leicester in February with the Globe, and Tenet's Bar in Glasgow as part of the Glasgow International Comedy Festival in March. So go buy tickets for that. I will be inevitably covering themes of autism and mental health in those, as well as a variety of other silly things that I will do, because I don't just trauma dump. In fact, very little trauma dumping in my shows.
You haven't trauma dumped.
Oh no, I meant in my hours.
Yeah.
I like their comedies first, but discussions about important things to me in the sort of around the 45-minute mark, usually.
Cool.
Yeah, they are discussions of that, but they are predominantly silly, fun things that anyone who enjoys innovative, alternative comedy and good writing, allegedly, according to reviewers.
Stephen Catling, thank you for being on The Hurt Locker.
Thank you for having me on, Yinka and Tim.
The Hurt Locker is a safe space for our guests to openly share their mental health experiences. If you have been affected by any of the content in this recording, then please reach out for support. If it is an emergency, dial 999. If you would like to talk to somebody today, then please call the Samaritans on 116 123. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hurt Locker. Please give us a rating or share with another listener. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Hurt Locker Pod.